Yeah, hey Sean. Obviously, you've got, looking forward, you've got the unique timing element with the Chiefs where you just played them not that long ago and you have a full week this time. So how much different is the prep the second time around, and how much do you rely on, what went well and what didn't 10 days ago?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think the prep is a lot different in that in a short week, you're getting a couple days of walkthrough, and then you're traveling and playing. So sometimes you reduce. I would say this, just speaking to my assistant, I'm like, Kevin, if you go back to my video hot folder last week for Kansas City, and so in that hot folder is, 4 years of study on certain red zone, short yardage. There's an exhaustive set of cut-ups that this week will just add the Chargers to, really. And so from a perspective of gathering the information, it's kind of there already in clumps. But the work week changes, and it's a little different that way. So I think for both teams, look, obviously when you play the same team within a few weeks, it has to be a division opponent. You're playing twice, and then you spend time on that last game. You spend time on the games in between, and then all the other pieces that go into it. But I think the uniqueness is one was a Thursday game and the other is a Sunday game. So I think that from a time element, there's more to it.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, Sean, a few weeks ago, you mentioned pre-snap process and cleaning that up. And the last 3 games, you've only had one false start. So when you've had success like that, how does that help you in terms of teaching concepts going forward when you can say, okay, we worked on this, we got the results that we needed to get, and having that lesson going forward?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good point. I think at the beginning of last week, I referenced to you guys, I had referenced to our team. There have been a number of examples. I used the Lions last year as an example at 1-6 and then flipping the switch. But there's been history. There's been a ton of the Carolina Panthers team that Denver beat in the Super Bowl the year prior. So not the year they went to the Super Bowl, but the year prior kind of had one of those flip the switches towards the midseason. They beat the snot out of us in the Superdome and went on a little bit of a roll, and it carried forward to the next season. And so that fine line between, being good or not being good is important to study. And one of the things I think in both those cases, but let's take Detroit, for instance, that flip, that change, if you will, really had a lot to do with takeaways and giveaways. And I think it's where ours has to start. We were good yesterday with no giveaways. We had the takeaway late in the game. But it has to, because the other stuff you can do really well, and yet if you give it away, we can come in and look at the red zone, the third down stat lines. We can look at a lot of things that are positive, but if you give it away, it's like the one thing that can trump everything. So hopefully that can have the same type of effect as the pre-snap stuff, when we preach these things relative to what wins and loses.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, Coach. On the flip side of that, you were frustrated by some of the operations where you had to burn some defensive timeouts in the second half, and we could see that you directed some of that frustration at Coach Joseph. Where are you at with your defensive coordinator? The confidence you have in Vance right now?
Listen, I'm in a great spot with him. You have to understand one thing about me, and he won't be the only one. I was frustrated, and you don't want to use those timeouts, and sometimes it's hard to be pleased or not upset. You want to play your perfect game, and that was a good win for us. And yet I'm driving home last night, heading to get sushi. I don't like sushi, and finding myself like circling around the parking lot, like, all right, why can't I be happy? Well, you're searching for that perfect game. And so I'm just that way. I'm sometimes, I'm going to wear my emotions on my sleeve, whether it's defense or offense. And so we got caught with 10. Obviously, the injury to Kareem was one thing, but it also impacts kind of a goal line personnel grouping, and we'll get that cleaned up. But all good there.
Go ahead, Eric.
Coach spent a lot of time on situations in the offseason and training camp. Had the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, and then that fourth down play where Russ kind of scrambled around and threw it out of bounds to end the game. How pleased were you with how you're able to translate those situations into these game scenarios?
Yeah, look, I was, and both of them. One of the things about these situations is, they're coming. You just don't know when they're going to come. And in some games, you won't see any of them. And then you'll have a game where you see 4. And you just know they're going to come up. Now, some of them come up once every 3 years. And so you have to be willing to prepare for once every 3 years. And for a fact it's going to come up once in 3 years. That I thought we handled the 2-minute at the end of the half well. We were smart relative to what the times shared. And, I thought I was pleased with how we handled that drive for those 3 points. That was important, obviously. And then at the end of the game, everyone has those little flip cards telling you when you can take a knee, when you can't. If you take a knee for 3 plays in a row, there's going to be however many seconds left. You're going to be punting. However, if you run it and you're smart when you run it, this thing's going to be down at 6 seconds. Now, north of 6, then again, it gets a little hairy on 4th down. And so 6 seconds, the science tells us that we can get into our last play, last pass, protect it, launch it down the field, and end the game without having to punt and risk a block punt. So now I would have liked that to have been 5, but it was 6, and we trusted the numbers. Probably 7 or more, and we're punting. And then you're punting quick, bringing your gunners in. So I think when it comes up and your players see it, they understand that it matters. All of it matters.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, Sean, just want to ask you about 2 defensive players that were kind of in different spots yesterday. Fabian Moreau starting on the outside, your impressions of him, and then Baron Browning making his debut on Sunday.
Yeah, listen, both guys we thought played well. Fabian played quite a bit of the snaps, graded out really well, stayed on top of coverage. He's a veteran player and has a presence about him. And then Baron, I think he was right at 31, maybe 29, 31 snaps. We talked about it during the week. We felt his pitch count would be somewhere in there. It was good to have him back in the lineup. So, 2 obviously different positions there, but nonetheless players that help contribute greatly.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sean, I ask you this kind of like if the head coach could talk to the offensive play caller in a separate sense, but your run game metrics are among the league's best. Do you think you're running the ball enough?
Well, it's a great question. I think we were 60-some snaps yesterday. I mean, look, generally speaking, from my experience, there are those games where you have, call it 35-plus rushes. And generally speaking, in those games, your 3rd down numbers are really good. Your CFL numbers are good. In other words, are we getting first downs on 1st and 2nd down? That's the first sign of a real good offense is you might have a smaller 3rd down count at the end of a game. Fair question, though. And we felt like we ran it well at Kansas City. I think that, look, there are people that believe you throw it in the first half, run it in the second half, and secure wins and all of those things. We do studies relative to sequencing against certain defenses. What sequence do we like on 1st and 2nd down? There's only 4. It's run, pass, run, pass, or pass, run. So we do sequencing studies. But there's a part of you that are trusting your instincts relative to how it's going. And so I felt like that was something that, and it gives you a little teeth to your play action as well. So I don't know that you're ever satisfied with it. I mean, I ran it one too many times on 3rd down and 3 or 4 yesterday. We had to punt, but you got to be willing to try running it on that down. I did not want it to become a drop back, rush the passer, sack fest. You know, that defensive front rushes the passer extremely well, even with 4. And so staying on schedule and managing the game that way was going to be important. But it's a question, though, that it's one of the things that finds me sitting outside a sushi restaurant pissed off. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Zach.
Coach, the defense has really improved over the last few weeks, last 2 games, giving up 18 points per game. What's been the biggest key for the turnaround from that group?
I think a good question. I think we're playing the run better. I know we played the run better at Kansas City. Their second half yesterday, we were in and out of some 7.5-man fronts into 8-man fronts. But overall, I think in 2 weeks, 2 games, we've defended the run better than in the prior weeks.
Go ahead, Brandon.
John, now that you've had a chance to go back and look at 2 plays specifically, the one that got Kareem ejected and then the Pat Surtain Dobbs play in the end zone, that I don't know if you saw the explanation from Walt Anderson and from the ref that said it was never going to be Surtain's ball, essentially. I guess I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, I saw it. And, and you just flip the page. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that's an easy, the term now you get a lot is, would you have supported an interception? And so that's the question. If the call on the field would have been an interception, would it have been overturned? I don't know that. That's the question I would have. But in regards to Kareem's hit, man, I've sat on this committee, the competition committee, for a number of years, and the challenge, we're constantly trying to work with and educate the players, and there are times when pad levels drop, and I know Kareem, and I know his heart, and I know the way he's played. I think it's an easy narrative to say, well, he's just an old timer playing in a new timer's game, but I really know that and when you see the play, his head's removed from the forcible contact. Defenseless is a little bit more of the issue relative to the position the receiver's in, but I just know where he's at as a player. And so we'll keep working on that. I know he'll keep working on it. And that's something, he's someone that's smart and really wants to do the right thing. And so, but it's one of the toughest parts to our game, for the officials, for the players, for all of us involved, of getting that to where it's clear and easy. And sometimes it's just not.
Go ahead, Darren.
Coach, your sushi story is fantastic. So I'm going to go back to that and just ask you, is one of your frustrations or maybe one of the struggles just finding how everybody does relate to each other, not just with you and VJ, but everything in a new environment. And as it clicks, you'll be in more of a groove than a rut. And to follow up on that, why were you getting sushi if you don't like sushi?
All right, let's go backwards first. I'm a good team player here, so my wife likes it, my kids like it, everyone in the party likes it. All right, so I'm a team player.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you the restaurant's name because they do a fantastic job. It was the first time. The nice thing is, it was the first time we were going out to celebrate at home after a win at home. So that was good.
Okay.
I think secondly, look, there's that competitive part in you that wants to score 30 points, that wants to take advantage of the first trip down into the red zone, and score a touchdown. And there's that competitive part in you that wants to finish the game where it's not coming down to the last drive. There's, sometimes there are these utopia games that really don't exist. And then there's, between that utopia game and the game you just played, there is some games in between there that you feel like you're capable of playing. And as coaches, we ask ourselves all the time, are we approaching it the right way? Did we, those type of things. So it's really more, it had nothing to do with, look, me getting emotional and angry during games is nothing new. And so maybe it's new a little bit here, but whether it's Vance or whether it's Joe Lombardi or Zach Street, the line coach, or whoever's, there'll be a number of times where that takes place. And then, literally 2 weeks later, someone will mention it and I will not even have remembered it. And so that's just in game. But I think there's an element of wanting it to be not perfect, but man, what it can be. And so there's certain things in your preparation that you do. And then you get to that point and there's like that perfect. And all of a sudden it's like, we run that naked second down. I don't know what the down and distance was, second and whatever. And we're in a heavy personnel grouping. We get the pick on the Sam linebacker. We're up onto the corner route. Javonte's in the flat, and the throw is low and away. And Javonte, he could have caught it, Russ. And you're like, this is the perfect timing. We're gonna gain another. We're gonna finish this game. Those type of things. Then you're like, did we rep it enough? Did I practice it enough? Those are the things where you pull your hair out. So that's probably the best explanation for it. And sometimes we got to sit outside restaurants of food we don't like.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, I know you touched upon Wil Lutz yesterday, but we've got him on the conference call today. What are some of the attributes you think he has that he could be a great kicker, as you stated yesterday, and just how he's performed lately, if you could elaborate on that as well?
Yeah, I think, look, going back, we had a kicking competition. I can't recall the year. There were 2 finalists. I mean, one of those competitions you guys are familiar with where you keep track each, all during training camp. And in our league, it's pretty normal during camp. There might be 4 teams in our league that have a kicking competition, but we were one of those teams, and it was back and forth. Our last preseason game was against the Ravens. I think Monday morning, John Harbaugh gave me a call, and he felt like he had a real good kicker that he was going to have to release. Obviously, they have a Hall of Fame kicker in the building. And he told me, he goes, I really think this guy's got, all those traits. And John and I have worked together, and certainly he and, I think Jerry might have been there at that time. There's just a respect level for those guys, especially not just in the kicking game, but they're fantastic in that area as well as overall as a team. And so we brought Will in Monday for a workout, and then Tuesday everyone's waiting to hear who's going to win this kicking battle. And we ended up signing Will and releasing the other 2 kickers. And there was a little bit of a leap of faith, but a gut there, and Will responded. Now, like all kickers, they're a little bit sometimes like golfers where they're going to have a stretch maybe where it's not hitting the fairway. But that being said, there's talent, and you see that there's leg talent, right? And then there's the stuff between the ears that's so important. And there's a confidence level, and from just having experienced it before with him, I was proud to see how. And I thought not only did he hit it yesterday, he hit it really well. And so that was a good game for him. It was a good game for our special teams. Kind of quiet to some degree relative to the return games, but overall, those were 4 big kicks.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, Sean. You guys went 1-4 in the red zone yesterday. I was wondering, I know that's been an issue for teams across the league, red zone offense, but I was wondering, when you look back at yesterday's game in particular, are there certain plays you wish you could have called differently, or could it have been executed a lot better?
Well, we try to look at like the real numbers, and you say, all right, and look, we go by what we go by. The end of half, I don't look like I was pleased we got the field goal there, that we got in close range for the field goal. And so I'll look closely at the other 2 possessions, though. For instance, we're down at the 6, what have you. We get the rushing touchdown. It's called back because of holding. And, that's the early one. So you have a penalty in the red zone. It's like when you convert a first down in the red zone, you look at the odds jump in your favor. When you have a penalty against you in the red zone, they go the opposite. So No minus plays, no penalties, no exotic snap counts, no turnovers. I mean, there's certain standards. And when you have a penalty in the red zone, it's pretty difficult to overcome relative to scoring. Nonetheless, to answer your question, yes. And so the two possessions, we would look closely at are those two that we brought up.
Looks like the last one in the queue is Arnie. Go ahead, Arnie.
Hey, Sean. I know we've talked about Javonte Williams, sort of making this record kind of quick comeback from this really devastating knee injury. But yesterday in particular, do you feel like he's hit his stride, that he would kind of be a little bit of a slow burn until, some weeks into the season that he would kind of become Javonte again? Do you think that's happening?
Yeah, I think, good question. I wasn't here, he was a little bit of an enigma for me, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but having not worked with him or P. Ryan or some of these guys, until you get into the games, you're not sure what kind of run. They're good runners, but you don't know what kind of runners they're going to be, and so I think Javonte in particular, heading into the preseason, the regular season, we limited the reps he had, and then he finally played some in San Francisco and a little bit more. And it's only in the last 4 weeks where, man, I'm really getting a good feel and a good handle on his strengths. And I think you're going to continue to see that trend of him just getting better and better. I mean, I've said this before, medically speaking, they'll tell you the recovery stops after 2 years. And they'll tell you, players can begin playing as early as 7-8 months, depending on their condition. He obviously is in great shape. He rehabbed extremely well. The confidence he's running with right now, man, he's close. He had a few big runs yesterday. P. Ryan has the big catch and breaks out of a tackle. Those are the plays that really were significant for us. But to your point, I think that the confidence, the stability, the recovery, all these things factor into a player who's playing better and better each week and playing with more confidence. And, man, it was good to see yesterday.
Thanks,
Coach. That's it for the queue.
All right. Thank you, guys.